Hello, I'm Lisa Burkhardt Worley, and welcome to Pop Talk, the show where you never know what topics might pop up. Pop Talk is sponsored by Prestige Development Properties. Have you or anyone you've known ever struggled with infertility? Usually you hear about these stories through the wife's perspective, but today we're going to hear about a journey through infertility from a husband's perspective. We'll introduce him in just a minute, but first say hello to our Pop Talk co-hosts, Michelle Burden and Renee Rollins.
Hey, everybody.
Our guest today is Todd A. Rehnquist. Todd is the author of 8 books, including the one we're going to talk about today, The Promise, a walk of faith along the IVF journey. Todd is also a business owner and a lay minister, and I just love the work you've done with your writing, Todd. You have written books like A Kingdom Puzzle, A Touch from Heaven, The Washed Foot, A Rendering from Heaven, and Fallen Away, A Message from Heaven. I got to read all those books about heaven. Sounds like a series. So The Promise is kind of a departure from what you've written before. Why did you decide to write this book?
It is. In the beginning, I didn't even know we were going to write a book. I just journaled the experience, and as we closed on it after 6 years, I decided this is really a topic that I've not heard of from a man's perspective, and so I thought, I've went through it. I want others to see, up front before they get involved in it, what some of the struggles are. And so that was the main purpose behind writing it.
Yeah, I guess you think sometimes when there's infertility, it always seems to go to the woman, right? It's like the woman's fault. The woman can't do it. So it's really actually very humble of you, Todd, to be able to admit that that there's it takes two. It takes two.
Right.
You both go through it.
Well, we were advanced in our age. I didn't even start this or get on the train for this until I was 52, and so I've got older children from previous marriage, but. She was 38 at the time, and so, it's a long story, and we'll get into that, but it was an adventure the whole way. Things that you never would have expected that we would be up against. I call it the unclimbable mountain. You just can't believe you're here. Where do we go from here? So.
Wow.
Can you discuss how you and your wife, Natalia's infertility affected both of you?
I'm sure. Well, mine was the primary infertility. So one of the things, how do you even begin to look for somebody to get this started? I'd had a vasectomy for 15 years prior to this, or 7 years before I met Natalia. And so obviously we go to a urologist, what are we looking at here? We just want to get reconnected and get on down the road and have a baby, right? Well, so the gentleman we found up in Frisco, he had told me, that no problem, we get you reconnected and everything will be flowing right, or it's free. However, I had been on testosterone therapy for 6-7 years prior to that, and what that does is it tells your pituitary gland to send the signal to other places to make what you need to have a baby, seeds, so to speak. And it doesn't do that when you're on testosterone therapy. So they couldn't even find sperm,
Wow.
And so some people older in age are probably on the therapy like I was, and they don't even think about these things. So interesting enough, he put me on this regimen of HCG, which is a chemical you look for to tell if a woman's pregnant. And we were on that for 7 months. And like I say in my book, you could have tested me and I would have been more pregnant than my wife because of that. But, the first 2 times through I think of the 2nd and the 4th month, he still came back, you've got nothing, And where do we go from here?
Right.
How do we do this? And so he said, well, we will take biopsy plugs from your testicles. That's how we're going to do this. And I'm all, okay, So,
all right.
But when we did that, we were successful.
I just want to say it sounds painful to me.
Yes,
I know we're all thinking that. I'm just going to say it. It sounds very painful. Yeah.
Yeah, it was no fun. But that's how, once we found that, though, we knew that we were on our way.
Wow.
But we didn't know for 7 months, are we going to be able to do this? So.
Yeah.
But then God, I was just sitting here thinking this whole time while you were talking, but God, thank you, Lord Jesus, because there's so many times in the Bible, like Hannah, Sarah, Elizabeth, and he opened up their wombs. And then your wife had a message in 2014 during a school for lay ministers, is that right?
Well, it's ministries for pastoral care.
Okay.
So pastors or lay ministers, it's kind of a place where you go to take trash out, so to speak.
Yeah.
Getting into the spiritual issues that might slow somebody down, plague them. Anyways, so they have an exercise that she did, and what it is they get everybody to participate that's going to engage in this, all right? And so you're going out in the ocean, you're on a boat, and my wife's all, sure, I'll do it, And they said, picture yourself diving over the edge, swimming to the bottom, and you're going to see a treasure chest, okay? It's the treasure chest that the Lord Jesus put there for you. And it holds your deepest desires and dreams, things, because life has been so hard, it's beat up on you, and it's caused you to just shut those things down, and you forget about them. And so you go through decades, not pursuing a dream that you might have had once before.
Right.
And so she was down there wrestling with the chest, she says, and she finally got it loose and brought it up to the boat deck. And when she cracked it open, there was a multicolored Easter egg in it. Had a line around it. And I'm thinking, really? She's telling me the story. And she goes, when I opened it, there was a baby inside.
Wow.
And immediately Jesus was to my side, and I handed him the baby. He blessed the baby. And at that moment is when I heard the Lord say, who made the choice to stop having children? Was that you without me, or did I make that choice for you? And I think at that moment, the Lord deposited something in her that was a journey that we're going to begin, So it was crazy.
Wow. It sounds like a great place to go for a retreat, though, too. Really, I think we can
treasure am I
sign up.
hiding?
You'll have to send us a link after the show.
No kidding, right?
But, we talked about Hannah, Sarah, and Elizabeth and how God opened their wombs. But really, in your book, you talk about Mary, and you think that her story, Natalia's story, is more similar to Mary than any of the others. Can you explain why?
Well, age is part of it. The three women you mentioned, Sarah, 90 at the time she gave birth, Elizabeth in her 80s, and Hannah in her 70s. All these women were very old and beyond being able to carry a baby or give birth. And so the Lord indeed opened their womb. However, with Mary, at 12 or 14 years old, and still that childlike faith, can believe, easy to believe, all right? So when Gabriel came to her and he told her what was going to happen, she might have been a little troubled, but she said, let it be to me according to your word, right? And so with my wife, the intuition of women is way better than the intuition of men, right? You'd agree with me, all three,
yes,
right?
Definitely.
So,
you don't have to, preach to us.
right. And so when the Lord spoke to her, what's this look like? You say, what's this sound like? I guess is what we'll come up against. It's more like that deep place within your heart that a woman, you intuit. It's not here, it's here. The seat of emotion. And he deposited in her where she could see and she could hear in that secret place that you see and hear with the eyes of your heart, not with your physical senses. And it's real. You know it's real. it's more real than the tangible world we live in, right? So,
Yeah. I always think when God speaks to me, it comes from another place. It's not. I know it's not my thought. It's like he almost interrupts, my thoughts, and I have to stop and say, what was that message again? And so I think that's probably what happened to her. She knew that she knew that she knew that this was from the Lord, from the Holy Spirit.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So like Joseph, you had to accept that Natalia was going to have a baby and that you were going to be a father. So when and how did you turn the corner on your belief in the message that your wife received?
Well, it took 6 months for her to tell me the news.
Wow.
She had counseled with a good friend of ours, and she told Natalia that until you have peace in your heart that Todd can go either way with this and your family will be okay, wait till then before you tell him. And so 6 months after her encounter is when she said to me one evening, "Hey, come in the living room. I'm going to talk to you about something." As a husband, that's not always the best thing. In the past, oh no, what we got going on here? So
What happened?
it was way bigger than I thought. Anything that could have went wrong, it was bigger. So when she told me the experience, that's when she told me the story. And I'm dumbfounded. I'm listening to it. And, she might have said, "What do you think?" Or I don't remember exactly, but I was on board. I said, at the end of that conversation, I'm looking around the house saying, our house has got 1 bedroom on the main floor and 3 upstairs. We're going to have to move. And so we put our house on the market in 3 weeks. It sold. It took 2.5 years to get pregnant.
Wow.
Wow.
Crazy. A crazy time.
So the book, The Promise, I was thinking about the title of that and what a promise is. But more than that, what does a promise from God sound like? What does it sound like in your life, in this journey, that promise?
I touched on that a little bit already with
Right.
how we intuit and where that comes from.
Maybe just talk about God's promise. You're a Christian author, so maybe just talk about God's promises and how we can trust in God's
True.
promise.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, the promises from God. When God speaks anything, He doesn't waste His words. Not one word is wasted. So if He's speaking to you and He's telling you something, it's as good as any promise. We can call it a promise. It's not a suggestion. It's, and for those that are either young in their faith and can believe right away, or older who have been schooled along life's journey and difficulties, it's the better way to go when you hear Him speak. And what's that look like? Well, that's kind of an action on my part, what I do next with that, right? Mm-hmm. Do I accept that? Do I reject God and go my own way? Which I have many times. We all have, I think. And because it's just too scary, But you had asked me earlier about Joseph and how that compared, He had to believe something that was going to happen.
Right.
Right? And he was troubled about it until he had the dream. But, I was on board from the beginning, but had no idea what we were going to face to get there. I probably wouldn't have said yes if I knew that,
Looking back.
No pat on the back here.
So promises, when we get them from God or when we get a word from God, He tells us about something in the future, which He can do. He gives us revelations. Sometimes they don't happen, like you said, 2.5 years for you guys. They don't happen right away. And I think part of this is a growth experience because He wants to see if you're going to continue to walk in that promise, even if it takes 1, 2, 3, 10 years. I think a lot of us have had things spoken into our lives that we haven't realized. I can remember years ago when this ministry was first starting, he said, it was actually a woman who said, a prophetic woman, she goes, "Lisa, you're going to be talking to the nations, but it's not going to be like you thought." Because I thought I was a speaker. You know, I'm a speaker. I want to go. You're going to ask me to speak, and you're going to book me, and I'm going to go speak in front of a big old crowd. No,
Right.
I didn't. I never dreamed I'd be going back to media again. Because when I left media, I thought that's it. But God had a different plan, and He had to reinforce this. Sometimes He does encourage us when He gives us a promise, and we start to drift away, like, you know, I'm not waiting on this. And then He brings us back through some encouragement.
Right.
So like you said, you wouldn't have probably gone through what you went through. So what you went through, I'm not going to give all the details, but you know, he had a vasectomy reversal before they could start. What?
No reversal.
No reversal.
We went with plugs, remember?
Oh, that's right, the plugs. That's right. I'm sorry.
Thought it would
Sorry,
be
I'm not up to
easy
speed
reversal,
on
right.
these things.
That's right.
But like you said, there was more to the procedure.
Oh, yeah.
Can you just talk about your own, I guess maybe your mindset when all this was going on? Did you ever just say, this is just too much, I can't? How did you stay focused and positive?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a great question. Everything that we faced as the unclimbable mountain along the first 7 months, we kept moving forward because of who made the promise. You know, the book talks about promises and how that works in our own life and how we set up roadblocks to not trust. But those are all human promises. Those are not the promises from God, right? So we have to learn what that's like and, you know, wait for the answer. And like you said, some things are way out in advance, like the three women, Elizabeth, Sarah, and Hannah. Hannah stayed the course, praying, and God rewarded her in that, and she got pregnant. Sarah was told, and 25 years later, finally, this promised child showed up. And Elizabeth, you know, her husband was told, you know, Zechariah was told, but he kind of blew it because he's like, how can I believe that? How can I trust that this is going to, you know, and God's all, you know, and he did what he did. But all these, it seems like they've been working on them for a time to be able to get it to fruition and come to pass, right? So ours, you know, everything we went down, when we finally found the seed so that we could move forward, then we ran into her issues that would cause issues in IVF. Of which, if you were just trying to have a baby normally, those issues wouldn't matter, not necessarily. But, you know, as a doctor would say, fibroid, that's a big issue. You know, baby's going to be deposited here when we transfer it, and that could cause a real problem, or this could cause a problem. And so we ran into the cyst problem, and we ran into the polyp problem, and we had another fibroid, and we had estrogen levels that weren't cooperating. We had everything that could go wrong went wrong. And when we're almost there, then the lab shuts down twice a year, you know, and then we're suffering through that, you know, and the ways they can manipulate a woman's body to hang on to those eggs, it just was astonishing to me. So
Science amazes me. It does. I can't believe some of the things that happen nowadays.
I know.
So it sounds like you were dealing with a lot of different things all at the same time, and like one kept going, one kept coming after the next.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like there, you know, that if she was going to have any chance to get pregnant, you know, it was going to take, obviously, a miracle. It was going to be from God. So did you ever feel like this was a bad idea, or maybe that you heard God wrong?
I
wrong.
thought it from time to time. You know, I'm not that pillar of strength that would go through that and just say, we got this, we're going to keep moving forward. It was heartbreaking. And then we were, where do we go from here? You know, God didn't say, travel down the road, make a left here, make a right there, and finally find the studio, you know. So, but, you know, I'll go back to it. We kept moving forward because of who made the promise.
Yes.
It was, we could trust in that, right? Because of what he's already done in our lives, right? So it was a long journey, but we achieved it, you know. It was wonderful, you know.
Yeah, the surgery, and then all of the things that you were saying about the fibroid tumors and everything. And I was thinking about your prayer life during that process. How did it get? I mean, would you describe that as just a persevering time, or did you really have an experience with the Lord where you grew and saw another side of what the Lord wanted to do in your own life.
Oh, yeah. I mean, as far as growing, there's no doubt we grew probably the most we've ever grown through that time. And that's generally the way you grow with God, is through the difficulties of where He's taking you. And not sharing what the next step looks like, right? Remember, you'd probably quit and give up if you knew everything. Thank God He don't do that. Thank you, God.
Yes.
Thank you, Lord.
But, you know, we ran into one roadblock after the other.
Right.
But we always go back to who made the promise. And even though we cried and we cried and we cried some more, it was difficult, you know. Watching my wife cry and breaking down and crying with her, and where do we go from here? Another doctor. We got to go see another doctor. So.
But you had some disappointments as well in this process, and you thought you had a baby growing. The cells were growing. You thought it was going really well, but then you got a call, and it was a disappointing call. Can you describe the feelings that you had when you got that call?
Well, when we finally got pregnant, or not pregnant. Sorry. Well, when we had the embryos, we ended up with 3 after our first IVF. We had more, but 3 were going to be mature enough to go ahead and implant later or transfer later. And so when we did that transfer the first time, we transferred 2 embryos and had 1 left. And during our wait over that 9 days to find out if we're pregnant or not, we get a call about 5 days into it, and they tell us that the embryo you had stopped growing. And so we knew our chances at that moment were diminished, where we had another possibility of going, and we're hoping for these 2 to make it. And at the end of the 9 days, we were waiting in our kitchen, and we got that phone call to find out we weren't pregnant. And that was just, we thought we had done everything right. We went through all the steps, and here we are being told you're not pregnant, of which so many that go down this road are told. And it's a heartache. It's hard. You know, we wept and wept. We went and bought balloons, one that said it's a girl, it's a boy, it's a girl or a boy for the embryo that we lost. And we prayed over them, let them go in the backyard, and cried over that too. So it was a tough time. What do we do now? You know, do we keep going? We got to go through a whole nother round of IVF if we do. So how do we do this?
Right.
Yeah, well, I know that people are listening and really want to hear some good news. So tell us. So when you're having dreams and you're having this beautiful baby, how did that materialize? After all of this
So
negativity.
through our second round of IVF, interesting is we harvested as many eggs as the first time, right? And so what I didn't tell you earlier is when we had the first biopsies taken to find sperm, I learned that before we were going to actually have a baby, that those are just backup. You're going to go get more biopsy when the time comes to go ahead and do this, which is right across the street from Baylor. So I'm dropping my wife off, and I'm navigating across 4 lanes of traffic to try to get over there, park it, run in. We do the biopsy. He told me to wear a tight shirt with a pocket and some tight shorts. And so I'm running back to the car holding my Tommy Johns, and the vial is in my top pocket because he says, we need to keep it warm until you get back over there, and that's why the pocket. And so I get in the car, yank it in gear, go across 4 lanes of traffic, get back to Natalia, and she was just going in, and we had 6 eggs, and out of those 6, they were able to fertilize 4.
Wow.
Okay, on day 5, the 2 that were not implanting lived, and we were able to save those for another time through freezing. And so, but with that implant or transfer of the 2 that we did, we actually got pregnant. We knew 9 days later. Actually, we knew 6 days into it. I think a lot of women and men that go through this, they're on their way to the store, 4 days after they transferred to find those pregnancy tests. Just I'm just going to see,
Right.
And we saw Well, actually, on the first time, we found out not until the very end that we were pregnant. So it was interesting, to say the least. We were overjoyed.
And you saw that baby, you saw that sweet bundle of joy. What did you think after that, after going through all of that? How did Natalia and how did you guys celebrate that?
Well, we can't quite celebrate until that happened.
Right.
We were in the birthing room. We were excited. We knew it was going to happen today or tomorrow. And so my wife's doctor comes in and goes, I'm running across town for 30 minutes. And while she was gone, the other nurse that was in there, she said, well, we might be able to do a vaginal delivery. Let's put this ball between your legs and help that baby descend a little bit more. So I leave the room and I come back in and there's this pool of blood underneath the bed.
Oh.
She's in a pool of blood in the bed. And I'm yelling at the nurse to get in here. And so one of these cords, because we had a low-lying cord insertion like that. But anyway, she lost 2 liters of blood. And so when they screamed her out of there into the OR, I'm left in a room not knowing what's going to happen to my wife or the baby. And so the nurse came in and threw some scrubs at me. Put these on quick and get in here. Still not telling me nothing. The moment I walked through that door, they handed me the baby, and it was just like the best time ever.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people want to know that you went through this again, and it seemed to go smoother the second time from what I read in your book. And now you and Natalia have 2 little girls together through this process. So congratulations, Todd. Thanks for documenting this in your book. It's called The Promise. Todd A. Rehnquist is the author, and you can find all of Todd's books, and there are a lot of them, on Amazon.com. And if you want to reach out to Todd, you can email him at Rehnquist. I'm going to spell that for you. REHNQUIST 1620 @gmail.com.
And we would love for you to connect with us here at Pop Talk, Pearls of Promise Ministries. You can email us at info@pearlsofpromiseministries.com. And we hope you'll like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Pop Talk Media, or Instagram at Pop Talk Ministries. Check out our past shows on Pearls of Promise and our YouTube channel.
And thanks to the sponsor of our program today, Prestige Development Properties, LLC. If you have a project that needs a commercial developer, Prestige Development Properties is the place to go. You can email Prestige at carrie@prestigedev.net.
And we are so thankful for all of our almost 20 television and radio and podcasting platforms. We're just grateful and thankful and that this message can get out to so many people all across the world. And we also are thankful for Grace Point Media, who puts this show on. For all of your media needs, go to gracepoint.media. That is Pop Talk for today. We're just ordinary girls
who God turned into pearls.
Have a beautiful week.